Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nelson Santini, and welcome to today's webinar briefing for OASIS, pursuit number 47, Quebec, Romeo, Charlie, Alpha, 21 November, triple odd, number 1. All right, some key takeaways from the presentation today. Just want to make sure that you actually just are looking out for them. Number 1 is OASIS is actually just a bit a ways out. It's not, too early to start organizing and getting ready for what's going to be likely a long haul. Number 2, if you're a small business, it's better timing than the present to begin to actually just go through your teaming arrangement, teaming ideas, and actually just entering into any mentor protege joint venture agreements now. So you have all that ironed out as you get closer to the solicitation. Make sure that we actually just work with a contracting officer so that we actually just become a known entity that is easy to work with. So that's one of the key takeaways that you want to take away from this presentation. And lastly, I'm adding here just the working on your pricing strategy, and that you will note if you go through the solicitation that the government has said that pricing is not going to be a factor in the actual award and the tallying of points going into the award, but it's going to be one in the task order. And I think that there's actually a little bit of a hook in here if you look at the subtext on how this is going to play out. So one of my key takeaways is don't sleep on the actual pricing strategy, because it's going to be actually just something to that's going to have importance in the solicitation. As far as actually, the sponsors of today, it is us, Trident Proposal Management. We're a service-disabled veteran-owned small business founded in 2008 out of San Diego, California, but with employees all throughout the United States and abroad. We specialize in capture management and proposal management, and anything under the development of a pipeline, capture management, coaching and mentoring, all of those functions related to capture management and proposal management. And your speaker, that's me today, Nelson Santini. I'm a former U.S. Navy submarine officer with about 25 years of experience in solicitations with the government, about $2 billion in IDIQs and task orders awarded and funded, and a lot more ceiling that I've actually just chased successfully. But here to actually just share with you some of our experiences and some of our comments related to OASIS, or the replacement of OASIS, I should say, from the GSA. In the agenda, very straightforward. I'm going to do a short review of the solicitation as we have it today, talk about the background, the timeline. We're going to talk a little bit about the organization and how the solicitation and the contract is going to be organized. We're going to talk about the domains of Scorecard. We're going to talk about how to prepare for it, and we're going to have a brief Q&A session at the end. I expect that within 30 minutes, we should be able to actually just wrap up and actually just move ahead. So with that said, if there are no other questions, I'll move ahead. If you have any questions, please make sure you actually just put them on the chat box. Or actually just feel free to engage here. We're going to have a great conversation. So if you have any questions, by all means, please raise your hand and just let me know. Okay, so OASIS and the services SMAC, and again, it's kind of funny, I'll just say it one more time, that the government doesn't even know what they're going to call the solicitations. So right now they're calling it the services SMAC, which is kind of funny when you look at the acronym SMAC, or the Big Mac, for best in class MAC. Or the replacement for OASIS. So they're actually struggling about giving it a name, but for now we're going to call it OASIS, or the services SMAC. The reason the government is actually just putting this solicitation out is they want to expand the professional services that they're offering, and this is specifically in the area of engineering services and human resources. And they want to use a contract vehicle that they can use to consolidate these stakes under one contract instrument itself, right? So this is so they can actually just track better, the awards that have been given, which is linked to the expenditures of the government. And this is a trend that we're seeing on multiple contracting vehicles on multiple agencies. So it's very normal to see this consolidation of all of those NAICS under one umbrella. The other thing which should be a benefit for you and for the government is just to make sure that the task orders are processed a lot more quickly. So we have the GMAC or the SMAC umbrella being established, and then the contracting officers are forecasting that it should be better for them to actually just process the task orders and make those awards happen. We all know that there's a big gap between the intent of actually just making it simpler, and what really happens. But we actually see that it's improving the amount of effort that is required to put a task order together and then to actually just process for onboarding and award, right? At the highest level, if you have not reviewed it, the replacement for OASIS, and again, the services SMAC, it's going to be a 10-year IDIQ with a 5-year base and 5-year options. It's going to be all for professional services. And I'm going to put a little star on that one because, again, in looking at the pricing catalog, the KOs are leaving some room so they can actually have some deliverables or hardware actually under the umbrella of the services provided here on the SMAC. And it's a very, very slim, gate to go through, but there's that possibility, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that one. It's going to be a dual track solicitation, so you're going to have a track that's going to be for the full and open, and then you're going to have another track which is going to be for small businesses, where we're going to have actually on both ends the NAICS organized in the different domains. I'm going to be talking about those real briefly. And again, we're going to have every kind of possible award under the MAC. So it's going to be a firm fixed price, cost plus, time and material, and task orders like that are going to be actually just funded through the contract. So it's going to be a very broad umbrella with the intent of actually just making it simple and also flexible for the KOs to award business through the IDIQ. On the screen, I'm actually just showing you that timeline of events as we have it today, and it's very straightforward. Solicitation is supposed to be let out, at the beginning of the fiscal year for 2023. And we're going to begin to see the awards and evaluation happen midway through calendar year 2023 towards the end of fiscal year 2023. This is actually such that we can actually, or the government can, I should say, migrate the services and contracting vehicles from OASIS and others onto this particular services SMAC. So they want to have some overlap between the end of the other agreement, OASIS, and then the replacement, this one, the services SMAC. So that's the current timeline. With anything that we're dealing, and as we're seeing the contracts being awarded, we know that it is very likely that the chart is going to slide towards the right. And so that's why we're saying prepare for a long haul, but actually just begin to make your preparations right now so you can be ready for the solicitation. On the expectations, if you're looking at the process and how the government is handling the solicitations as of lately, we expect that we're going to have a lot of talking back and forth, industry days or variations thereof. And if you actually pursued OASIS, like I did, expect that the process is going to be very dynamic with multiple meetings, whether it's through video teleconferencing or actually just meetings in person, where the government will invite the industry to come in, provide opinion, and actually just help shape the solicitation. Multiple RFIs are expected depending on the services that are going to be covered. And again, by the domains, we expect that those RFIs are going to be let. And the solicitation is going to be graded just like Polaris, if you're following that one, or if you followed a couple of the latter contracts that GSA has been let out, it's going to go through a digital submission with a scorecard. And the good news in this particular case is that there is no limit into the awards that are going to be given by GSA. The only limitation is making sure that you can actually just, pass the bar, if you will, make sure that you actually just meet the minimum number of points. My suspicion on this one here is that at some point there is going to have to be a cutover as far as how many entities can sell through and sell into OASIS or the replacement SMAC. So I advise, and I want to make sure that you, of course, go for the highest score that you can actually just go for. So this would now be the time just to make the minimum be okay. When we're talking about domains and just continue with the conversation in this particular contract vehicle, again, it's going to be characterized by the fact that we're going to be selling two different domains. And domains, this is a fancy way of saying the government is going to group some services by NAICS into these areas, right? And so what they're foreseeing, the benefit being to the industry, is the fact that the NAICS will be in multiple domains. And so this basically means that if you actually are within a domain, you can actually sell or actually just bid, even if your company is not actually just declaring GSA to have that NAICS. So if you're within the domain that has your NAICS for the services that you provide and a solicitation goes into it, you're actually just going to be able to actually bid into it and, arguably just qualify and basically just put those NAICS into your barrel or bag of tricks, if you will, to actually just earn that business. Conversely, for the government, having the NAICS on multiple domains is going to allow them to be more clear in discerning what are the specific services for those NAICS, because some NAICS actually have multiple classifications, right? So this is one of those that are of mutual interest and benefit to the government for them to have the ability to further qualify exactly what service under the NAICS they're asking for, and for entities to actually have more flexibility into bidding more into some of the domains, so long as you basically have one of those NAICS into the bag of tricks, onto your GSA qualification, right? So this is kind of like the approach that they're following right now for the domains. In fact, I'm showing you here on the screen, there are going to be two groups of domains. One of them is going to be actually group one, which is engineering, research and development, logistics, management, and so on. They're going to have actually a group of services for facilities. And then in orange, the special categories, which are Intel, the environmental, and in the enterprising. And I mentioned in the last proposal, we expect that the environmental is going to see a lot of activity because that's actually one of those areas where we're seeing a lot of funding allocation in the budget process, right? So just keep a look at those activities, and just if you have any questions, please feel free to direct them to me or to the group here at Trident. On group 2, you're going to have your more human resources type services. So finance, human resources, administrative, and social services. So again, 2 major groups that are going to be actually just carrying all of the domains, and those domains are going to carrying the NAICS, for the services. Moving right along, and then just looking at the qualification process, it's going to again follow the scorecard methodology. And just for some motherhood and apple pie, just to make sure that everybody understands the process, it's going to be a weighted factor area. So imagine that you're going to have multiple factors. I'm just showing here factors A, B, C, and D. Each factor is going to be given a particular weight. And then what is going to happen is you're going to have your credits, based on factor, going to multiply the times the weight, and then you're going to have a combined score, which is going to be actually what's going to help you be ranked. It's almost like an order of merit. You're familiar with the concept, where they're going to have the vendors, and they're going to be stacked based on ranking on their scoring that they have. Again, if you look at the solicitation, it says, and the government has declared multiple times that they're not going to put a limit, but I mean, they also make the note to say that they reserve the right to change their mind. And so again, this would not be the time to just be happy to score the minimum and qualify. I would, like anybody else, make sure that in your capture plan, you're looking to make sure that you have as many points as possible. And that's going to be a function of the deals and also the past performance that you want to bring to bear into the solicitation, right? This is actually just to show, and again, in their mindset of the government, the scorecard methodology is to make sure, number one, that you're best in class or you're top tier and that you're ready, right? So make sure that when you're going through the process of preparing for OASIS, that you take the time to look at your systems and policies within your organization. Make sure that you have all your certifications current and applicable, and that you actually just meet the experience requirements, for the solicitation. Great way to do that is to look at past solicitations like OASIS. Is a great place to look at the requirements there and use those as a place to start, understanding that the government can change the requirements, but that's going to be the methodology that they're going to follow. And again, strong advice to make sure that we look at your systems and policies, conduct a complete review, look at your certifications, make sure that they are current, both at the individual level and also at the corporate level, and make sure that you actually look for the past performances that are going to best showcase your experience, right? If you have that ready, then it's going to be easy for you to show that you're a great vendor to do business with, right? When you're looking for the evidence and moving along into the area of the scorecard methodology, you're looking at past performance on deals that have been awarded to you or to the corporation that have a value that is higher than $250,000. So $250K individual task order, right? And you are going to have a 5-year window from award to make sure that you look at your particular deals that you're going to want to use as evidence to justify your scoring, right? So you got to make sure that you have those identified. And again, this is going to be interesting because if you read the fine print, you're going to have to select 5, but you're also going to have to show that you have more than 5. So if you only have 5 past performances, okay, you meet the requirement, but you want to make sure that, you pick the best 5 out of the greater population that you may have. And again, that's part of the research and part of the little details as far as where the government may actually just award points, but also have a back of the napkin scorecard, if you will, just to show all of the other projects that you're bringing to bear for review and to justify your case for the government. Specifically, because the question is asked a lot, I would recommend that you actually just look at your past performances and make sure that you identify the ones that are just within the 5-year window. And then you spend special time, looking at those that are just marginal or could be outside the window, right? And on the chart, what I'm showing here is the fact that if you have, some of those past performances that are just pushing on the 5-year and understanding that we're very likely to have actually a delay in the award, make sure that you have a backup plan, or that you actually do make sure that the last, billable work that you did, for that particular job is going to be somewhat closer to within that 5-year window. So you give yourself some room to breathe, if you will, to make sure that you're not looking at solicitations right now that are 5 years out as of October of this particular year, because it's very likely that they may fall outside the window. So in an abundance of caution, please make sure that you look at those solicitations and make sure that you actually just weed those out before they become a problem, right? I'm moving right along on a good clip. If you have any questions, please make sure that you actually just hit me up on the questions. I see nothing, so I'm going to keep on moving forward. Um, Again, on the recap on the scorecard, again, make sure that you have your 5 best qualifying projects, from a minimum number. So make sure you go through that qualification or sorting, if you will, to stacking your QPs to make sure that you can actually just use them. Look for that 5-year window, right? And let's make sure that you identify those QPs or qualifying projects where you actually have positive feedbacks through CPARs, right? And so this is one of those, again, that is motherhood and apple pie, but sometimes we miss the boat and we pick up contracts where we don't have either positive or we don't have evidence to justify the performance on the CPARs. There's a lot of talk about how to basically just prove positive performance or get some other ways to actually just show that you actually just did the job that you said you were going to do to the government. There are other tools to actually follow, but give immediate preference to those contracts where you actually have positive CPARs. This is now a topic of interest, and again, it's on the pricing data, right? And again, although it's not going to be, as of today, a specific factor for the evaluation, overtly into the scorecard, I think it's going to play a factor into evaluation that is perhaps called soft evaluation, where the government's going to make sure that they're looking at, against the methodologies that you use for pricing, the tools that you use for pricing, and making sure that you have your regulations and restrictions in place so that you're considered to be a best-in-class vendor for the government. So that means that you should have a pricing schedule. I'm not saying necessarily that you got to have a Schedule 70 or a GSA schedule for your services, but you want to make sure that you have actually a good pricing catalog that actually shows your retail pricing, that actually shows the discounted tiers, that shows how quotes are actually just approved and released, and it shows what are the mechanisms to provide discounts and to justify discounts to the government. So this is one of those areas that it's going to take a little bit of effort to make sure you have your house in order. And if you have not gone through the effort, strongly would advise that you actually just enter into the process of putting your services into a schedule and onto GSA. It's not going to hurt you. And even if you don't qualify for OASIS, it's going to be something positive to actually just use for your other business development pursuits. But this is an area where putting some elbow grease right now may be to your benefit. And I think it's going to play one of those discriminating roles in the solicitation and grading, right? The key thing here is that the government is going to be looking at the pricing at the task order level. And so that's going to be something that's going to be after the award of your seat, if you will, in OASIS. When the task order is evaluated, that's where pricing is going to be a major factor. So that's at least what's being declared. If you've been in the industry and you've done this work before, you understand that there's a good possibility that they'll look at pricing beforehand. And that's obviously one of those factors that is always important, right? Pricing is just, along with risk, are just some of those critical factors that are always considered in a solicitation. And the last topic, for us to cover today is actually the one topic that has been creating some waves in these solicitations: small business segment versus the unrestricted segments, right? So your business can bid on as many segments as possible and as many as they qualify for. And again, they're going to have 2 major tracks: the unrestricted, and it's going to be the small business one. The small business is going to be sub-segmented, and right now they're advertising having anything under the sun from 8A to Hub Zone to small business, woman owned, you name it. It's just basically just all of the different versions or types of small businesses. What the government is looking at is how do they group, if they group these pools at all, or how do they basically just make it such that they don't do what's called micro segmenting. So that's been under evaluation, but there will be at least the unrestricted pool, and for the small businesses, there's going to be at least more than one classification. So perhaps small business, which is a global, and then everybody else, or small business and a subsegmentation between veteran-owned, woman-owned, hub zones, 8As, or groupings thereof, right? So right now, the jury's still out exactly how they're going to be segmenting, but it's just going to be basically at 2 tracks, and expect that it's going to be at least, on the small business, at least more than one, classification there. We just went through these small businesses. And again, the biggest concern is the micro segmentation, as I just attested to. So expect that there's going to be some grouping between these entities. And the other lightning rod within the area of actually the small businesses is the mentor protege joint venture program. And I'm going to make an aside in here. If you were following actually Polaris as we have been, you saw last week that on Friday, the government put a notice out saying that there's going to, the protest was resolved the week before. And then last week they said, we're going to basically just put a delay and we're going to extend the deadline into the month of June, which is what we expected. Big so what is the fact that the protest that was filed on Polaris actually was dismissed, and basically the judge and the government office, right, just said, we're just going to proceed as we have declared. We will allow to have joint ventures and the mentor protege programs to exist, and for the small businesses to leverage the experience of the larger entities, the mentors, and the larger entity in the case of a joint venture. So those past performances will play, and expect that this is going to be a thing, for OASIS or for this SMAC replacement. So step into it, right? Don't shy away, and begin to make your plans to actually find out if you're interested in actually just entering into a mentor protege JV relationship, to do so early, right? It's something that it takes time. You ought to prove to the government that what you have is an established relationship, or although they're going to allow having relationships that have been just created for the solicitation. Again, it's the benefit to have them well established, to prove that you're doing some solid business, and this is not your first foray in doing business as an entity, right? But it does take time. It's an investment of money and effort, right? And so the big message here is, if you're considering a mentor protege JV, congratulations. You have time to do it, but you basically better start working through that process. And again, making sure that you complete all of your administration, so that then you can move to the preparation phase and make sure you have all your documentation in order. The last element that I would like to leave you with is actually some of the keywords and tricky phrases. The government is actually using these phrases throughout just to give themselves some wiggle room. Last week we had 3. This week I added the 4th bullet. So targeted representation, if you look through the contract, it means that they're leaving themselves room to make sure that they don't have, say, for example, too many entities that are of one classification. So they're going to look for doing what's called a quality spread. Number 2 is the best in class. And so all of this about the scorecard and all about the soft ranking as far as being easy to do business with the government and the likes is just to make sure that they actually have some leeway to classify or deem you not to be best in class, which is a way to actually disqualify folks. Easy to do business goes with the previous one. Again, best in class and easy to do business with. Hey, do I want to do business with this entity? That's the mindset of the government. And the last piece is commodity and service pricing. So you're looking here at the government saying, we're not going to basically just make pricing an issue when we go at ranking. We're going to worry about pricing when we do the task order awards. And in the same paragraph, they're talking about the fact that although this is services, we're going to allow some commodity pricing there as well. And so it's going to be a tight window for any one vendor or company to say, for example, put computer equipment or other IT equipment, for example, in this solicitation, because we have other contracts for that. But, there's going to be that element, which is going to be used by the savvy businesses to discriminate and steer task order awards through their product catalog, to their coffers. So just be mindful as far as, the language that you observe. Commodity and service pricing tells me that in the pricing catalog and how you basically put that together, you're going to have some leeway to make to steer some business your way and to lock others from getting into your task orders, if you're playing the capture game correctly, right? How to prepare, and how do we actually just make the most out of actually just getting ready for OASIS? Make sure that you start with a solid bid, no bid, right? Right now it is the perfect time for you to have a formal bid, no bid with a company. And even if you know that you have to bid it, it's a good exercise to go through. It's not academic, because you want to make sure you have the buy-in from the leadership to make sure you actually just go after this pursuit, and from all of the stakeholders to understand that this is something that's serious, right? Make sure you begin by identifying and having your resources committed, whether they're within the company or across companies, if you're working with teammates, to make sure you actually have a well established proposal team. Just have some of the key players identified. Make sure that you look at your teaming situation. So again, you have the right resources, whether it's personnel or funding available. And that taps into the last one when I mentioned funding. Make sure that you have a good budget, because again, it's going to be a long process to actually just go through the bidding in OASIS. So make sure that you are actually just well-staffed, well-arranged, and actually just well-funded to go after this particular pursuit of the services MAC. On the key elements, again, organize your qualifying projects. Make sure that you have them. Make sure that you rebuild your pricing catalog so that it is current. And again, it's just beyond the pricing, making sure that you have the right mechanisms to approve a tool, the right controls to change pricing, that you have all of that documentation processed so that you can prove to the government that you have your house in order. Sorry about that. I'm actually just coming on video. Oh, the camera just decided to just do a quick reset. And here we go, back on air. Okay, so last couple of bullets. Again, check your NAICS in accordance with your registrations and SAM, to make sure that you actually just have everything qualified and correctly dotted, and T's crossed, so you have your NAICS on your file. Make sure that you organize your CPARs, find them, classify and stack them. Make sure that they're within the 5-year window and they're not going to be pushing against them, or basically against the deadline, so you can actually just use them for the solicitation. Review your certifications. Make sure that at the company level and at the key personnel level, if there are any, that you're current on all your certifications so that you don't have a problem when you have to justify your case with the government. And the last thing is just to review your systems, procedures, and documentation, because that will actually just play a role into how you control your staffing, control of services that you're going to offer to the U.S. government. And with that, I think that the next slide is actually just questions. So it's time 3:29. I've actually just moved through the slide, so we could actually just spend 30 minutes, give a quick update, and get back to the other business that we have in hand. I'm going to look at the screen to see if there are any questions. I see that I have Doug, Brian, Jerry, Marcia, Sohail. So any questions from the rest of the team online tonight, or actually this afternoon? Any questions? I don't see anybody typing, and I don't see anybody just piping up. So I hope that this information was actually useful to you. And just to make it simple, when we're abridged here from this presentation, you'll be directed to our website at tridentproposals.com/OASIS, where you can actually just continue to find relevant information about OASIS, the replacement program. Download the presentation that you saw, and also if you want to actually just share the video of this webinar, it will be online in a couple of hours. So thanks a lot for your time. Thank you, Sohail. I appreciate your comment there. And so if there are no questions with that, going once, going twice. Thank you so much, everybody. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day on Hump Day Wednesday. See you guys in the next episode of OASIS webinar series or the SMAC replacement. Take care. Nelson Santini for Trident Proposals, out.